Hey everybody, welcome back to the Som TV podcast. This is Jason Wise. Today's pod, you guys, it's Cinco de Mayo. Very soon, if you're listening to this after, could actually be past Cinco de Mayo. So fire up your margaritas, your beer, put some salt on the rim. It's going to be a good thing. Sabato Sagaria is joining me on the podcast to talk about cocktails and liquor from the 1970s. Those bottles you see at bars that you don't know what they're used for, but they all have great stories and origins. We're going to cover about 3 or 4 incredible cocktails with wild stories that may or may not be true. And we have a guest person joining us today, Master Sommelier Carlton McCoy, who is starring on CNN Original's new show Nomad, and is also a really, really funny guy. Someone I love very much. You can see him on A Drink a Bottle, where he opens up the Heights Cellars Judgment of Paris Vintage 1971 Martha's Vineyard. It's an incredible bottle. Really great episode streaming now. Also, Sabato gets into the Cinco de Mayo story and how to make a proper margarita on Som TV as well. So you want to go there and check that stuff out. And I want to give you a little bit of a warning here. The 3 of us are a little rowdy in this podcast, so if you have little ones in the room, you might want to turn us down, okay? Before I talk to these 2 gentlemen, I want to remind you, the new film we have coming, The Whole Animal, which looks at culture and food across 7 countries and many years of filming, the new film that I have directed is coming very soon. Our premiere is Chicago, May 26th at the Music Box Theater. Tickets are available in the show notes. We are pouring an incredible selection of Ridge Vineyards Library Zinfandels, which are incredibly rare, hard to find. If you are in Chicago and you want to drink some wine with us, eat some steak, and have a great time at my new film, May 26th. Get your tickets. They're selling fast. There's also general admission. That includes a glass of wine. Also, don't forget, go to somtv.com, subscribe. The film is going to come June 3rd to that place. So we're excited to have all of you. Now, my conversation with Carlton and Sabato. It's an amazing, for me, honestly, it's an amazing thing to have both of you guys in one place. Carlton McCoy and Sabato Sagaria, master sommeliers. To what do I owe this honor? To have the 2 of you guys in one place. Welcome back to the Som TV pod, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we come together at least once every quarter to recharge. We're just rubbing our bald heads together.
This is a good call.
Yeah.
Those of you listening in your car or at home, I am looking at 2 of arguably the most beautiful men, at least on the Eastern Seaboard. They're both bald, and they both wear it perfectly. These guys, you know Sabato from Som 3 and Som 2 and Som 1, and you've never heard of Carlton. But I will tell you that Carlton is...
This guy's going places. This guy's going places. I'd keep an eye out for this one. He's the real McCoy.
Host of CNN Original Nomad, which is a fantastic show airing right now on CNN. You have to watch it. It's an incredible thing. And I'd love to do a whole podcast about, all of the crazy stories you must have from the travels. But right now we're here to talk about cocktails, which every time I talk to Sabato, he's either getting out of rehab or talking about cocktails. It's one of these 2 things. And so we're talking about cocktails today. And I couldn't pick 2 guys that'd be more fun. We're going to talk about those old ass bottles you see on the shelves at your bar and the cocktails that go along with it from the 70s. So where do we start, gentlemen?
Where do we start? When I think of, not that I was drinking a lot in the 70s, just to put that out there, but I remember going to like the weddings and you're underage and you're like, okay, what can I order from a wedding bar that I could palate? Like, I'm not drinking scotch and soda, at the wedding bar, but maybe a fuzzy navel or a what else would you drink? Fuzzy peach schnapps, and nothing better than peach schnapps and orange juice, or Midori sours, that kind of stuff.
Midori sours,
yeah. The Midori.
So basically, these are simple. These are relatively simple cocktails that have a few ingredients that are composed of things that are, let's just say they're not. This isn't like the artisan old fashioned that's barrel aged in the hipster bar. This is like you go to a dive bar and you see that bottle every single time. And I think until relatively recently, you could name these bottles.
And not just like that brand. It was the exact bottle.
It's like that exact bottle has been there for 20 years. And so, for me, I mean, let's name a couple of these cocktails. Like Harvey Wallbanger, you talked about the Fuzzy Navel. You know, Carlton, like
Harvey's
what's an
classic.
example of a cocktail from the 70s that you're like into? You're going to defend here.
I think anyone who's studied for similar exams, you end up with these cocktails on a flashcard, and you're like, I want to try them. But, you go to a bar, you order them. Most bartenders are like, I have no clue what that is. And so I used to go to old bars in D.C., and you try these things. And I remember having my first Harvey Wallbanger, which is something that you have to be careful saying out loud because people don't know it's a cocktail. And you're like, what is this guy talking about? But you see the guy like pull the bottle of Galliano and blow some dust off, and he like gives you that look like, are you sure about this? You're like, yeah, but it's delicious. And it's got like this sort of, it's vodka and orange juice and a floated Galliano. It's got this like aniseed sort of thing to it. It's sweet and it's easy. And, there's like this really poundable drink. And it's perfect for weddings, to Sabato's point. As a bartender, it's like quick, easy, you hammer them back.
I think as we're talking about these, I'm also thinking of the bottles, as we were saying earlier. And all these bottles could also be converted into lava lamps if you think about it, like the Midori bottle, the Galliano bottle. Right.
And they also have like these really weird neon, like colors. Fluorescent colors. Yeah,
exactly.
They stand out.
None of the colors are natural. They have to be. They're all made from some extinct beetle, and like it's very odd. Every color is so weird. I have to tell a quick thing about Harvey Wallbanger. I hope people listening have ever either tried these
cocktail or the gentleman himself.
The gentleman himself, I hope you have not tried. He's a surly guy. But the cocktail itself, I was at a wedding in Hawaii, one of those destination weddings that happened pre-COVID. And we were there, and another guy who's a troublemaker and I decided we were going to start drinking Harvey Wallbangers at the open bar. And they had one bottle of Galliano. So we started drinking it, and we were really loud and rambunctious, and the rest of the weddings like kind of coming up, like, what are you drinking? We tell them, and we'd make up stories every single time another person asked us, what's the drink and where did it come from? We'd make up stories, this guy was a sailor, he was a shark hunter, he was this, then like this guy was a World War I captain, and he got stuck behind enemy lines. And we just kept telling different stories about who Harvey Wallbanger was. And then by the end of it, the hotel, they ran out of Galliano. The bartender told us
the one bottle.
Yeah,
you drank a hotel out of Galliano.
This was the Four Seasons in Hawaii and Maui. And so but the crazy part about this is like the guy literally said, you drunk ass. I had the worst hangover of my entire life the next morning, still standing to this point. But the guy's like, you assholes, we didn't sell for 4 years. I didn't open that bottle. It never even moved. I mean, there's a ring around, it's probably attached to the bar.
Oh yeah.
And then in one moment, because of like your weird behavior, we the whole entire 7 foot tall weird Galliano bottle disappeared. And that's my love of these cocktails.
But they go down easy, huh?
They go down way too easy.
They were made. These cocktails are made for high levels of consumption. This is an era where people were drinking heavily. It's not being conservative.
Jason, it's funny. I was at the Four Seasons in Maui too, and they had 12 bottles of Galliano back there. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And like, well, some dude drank a whole bottle, and so we had to re-up on it.
Waiting for this guy to come back.
And he hasn't come back yet. I don't know what happened. So Galliano has a very sweet spot in my heart, no pun intended, because I remember vividly that growing up in Columbus, Ohio, and my parents would have friends over and they'd entertain for dinner parties. They'd make the really fancy crudité with the ketchup and mayonnaise dip to go with it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the evening, they'd pull out these pewter glasses that they'd put in the freezer. And so they're frosty and all cold. And they'd pull out the bottle of Galliano and they'd
from the freezer.
Who has a freezer that big? The glasses out of the freezer, and then they'd pour the Galliano in there. And I remember as a kid, as a treat, I'd get to taste a little bit. So that was really like one of my first forays into Galliano. And then every time I've opened I've overcome this, but I would, opening bar. Well, you have to have Galliano on the opening order. And I realized now why people do that. It's that if you have the bottle of Galliano there, what it does is due to the color of the bottle, of the liquid in the bottle and the shape of it, it actually draws the dust off of all the other bottles and onto that one bottle so that you don't have to polish the others. So it's really a bartender's friend in that sense. So, that's why it's on so many bars around the country. They don't really tell you that, but I've read a lot about it.
I think for me, another one of these cocktails, it's like that's so funny because everybody can picture, even if you don't even know what we're talking about, you can close your eyes, you can look at your mind's eye of a dive bar, and you can see this very tall.
Correct.
I mean, what is it, like 28 inches? Something like that. Like it would never fit on any shelf other than standing upright. It's always a pain in the ass. But like, I bartended through film school and all that stuff, and I don't think I ever poured it. I never poured it. I never opened it. It was not like a thing that happened. And which brings me to my next weird liqueur alcohol, which is Drambuie, which is another one that sat very nearby on my bar to that thing. And you get the occasional woman. Now this woman is gone. They've all died of cancer because they all smoked 6 packs of Larks a day. But this woman would come in and she would ask me for her rusty nail every day. And I'm talking every day. It'd be a rusty nail. And I loved serving it. She had the greatest stories. And she was basically the woman from Beetlejuice who had the smoke coming out of her neck. That was essentially this woman who I served. And so I think of the rusty nail as like this, I hope Drambuie never goes away. But I do think you have to smoke several packs of Pall Malls or Larks may be recommended. I'm not sure what your smoke of choice is to enjoy Drambuie. Do you guys have a history with that? Because the rusty nail is that is a classic.
Like I can't think of anything else that you use Drambuie for. But I do remember when I was flying. I was in high school flying overseas. We were going to go actually live in Jakarta for a year. And that's when I wasn't sitting in the same row as my parents. Who says that?
Like, we're going to go live in Jakarta,
Wait a second.
You're like the Dos Equis guy. It's
somewhere.
Great.
And so I wasn't sitting with my parents, and the cart comes around, and they say, "Oh, would you like an after dinner drink after you just had your little airplane dinner?" And I'm like looking around, nobody's saying I can't. And so, they had Bailey's, and I was like, "What's that?" And that's when I had my first Drambuie shot. Was on an airplane. And aside from that, I can't think I've had Drambuie since then. So that's and then back to Galliano. This just popped in my head as you were talking about the woman at the bar. I was working in West Virginia at the Greenbrier Hotel, and I remember a server, and she was a sweetheart. Her name was Barbara, and I want to say Barbara's probably in her 60s. And she was waiting on this table, and she's going around taking drink orders. And the gentleman says, "I'd love a golden Cadillac." And he's like, "What can I get for you?" He's like, "I'd love a golden Cadillac." And she's like, "Well, so would I, but what can I get you to drink?" And then he's like, "No, I want a golden Cadillac." And then she came over and had to ask me what a golden Cadillac was. And that's a classic Galliano drink. And I have to think that all those classic Galliano drinks are probably written mostly by the Galliano marketing team rather than anyone else. I
mean, there's somebody out there that's memorized like the Boston cocktail book and like knows like the 6 standard Galliano cocktails. But this is going to sound atrocious, Sab. If we're going to stay on Galliano for just half a more second, I had somebody, no shit, who used to come into the bar. Older gentleman who's a teacher at Chapman. He will remain unnamed, though he's like an award-winning filmmaker who would come in. And he would have coffee with Galliano in the coffee. And
was it a Venti or a Grande?
I refuse to use those names. I go to Starbucks and I go, "I'm sorry, small, medium, large." We already had names for those. I refuse to use those.
And that's when they say, "I refuse to use your name either, Mr. Colton, your Grande Venti Mochaccino Unicorn Latte."
I love that. Like your hill to die on is against a place that there's like 437,000 locations. You're not going to win this war.
It's absurd. It's an absurd thing. We already had names for these. Anyway, so I was going to tell you as well that as far as the Drambuie, when I worked at the Mandarin Oriental in DC, we used to have this old lady who used to come over and have Drambuie in her coffee. You mentioned that. It was like Drambuie and coffee every morning, and out of a mug. And I think she thought she was fooling everyone. But she was just getting sauced early. And that was when I first started studying. I didn't know what Drambuie was. who knows or
Scotch and heather honey, right?
yeah, cares what it is. It's like not something you use very often. Same thing. You just go, what? Drambuie and coffee? They're like, Carlton, yeah. Just put it in the mug, bring it over. She doesn't want anyone to know. Sort of thing. Yeah.
I think Drambuie and Galliano and you mentioned like from Aperol or any of these red based things. Those are actually pretty common. You drink those. I drink those. I like Campari. But is that because there was a resurgence? I mean, was that one of these bottles that sits on the shelf that we're talking about for a long time, or no? Because Sab, I will never forget this. Really fast before you talk, when I first started filming Sam, and I walked in, this is like one of the first times I ever met you, aside from the drunken thing in Napa, which we won't talk about right now. When I really first met you, we were at an event, and it was a tasting thing. It was in San Francisco. It was really hazy, and people were pounding wine, and you had a Campari and soda, and you said to me, you were doing this wrong. You literally looked at me in the face. You said, here, have one of these, because there's way too much alcohol for how long this process is going to be, and you might have to sip something. You put me on to Campari and soda, and from that point on, it's been like a house, aside from being a great mixer and all these other things, it's been a house. Like Campari and soda is like a wonderful thing if you just want a spritzer type thing. But so I can't envision it being one of these type bottles that just collects dust.
It was until you knew how to use it, because it's one of, think about it compared to all the other things we've talked about, which are all sweet. Campari is extremely bitter. And I remember the first time I had Campari, I was like, whoa, how do you even drink this? But then having like an Americano, and I can't tell you how many times I've ordered Americanos in restaurants, and then the coffee drink comes over, and I said, no, I want a Venti Americano cocktail.
And I flipped the table.
Yeah.
Don't support this behavior, Saab.
I think it's fun to go liquor by liquor by liquor, because it's almost like these brands are impervious to any kind of inflation, recession. It really doesn't matter. They seem to somehow exist.
And how though? Like, how many bars are opening when somebody says, "I need to go order a case of Drambuie, a case of B&B, a case of Galliano"? Like
B&B is a great one. B&B is a great one. B&B I don't have the same kind of story for. I mean, the two I was going to bring up next, and I'm afraid I'm going to open the floodgates here, is Di Serono and Frangelico. Those to me are if you're talking about bottles that are just chaos shaped, like our wonderful Galliano, these bottles are literally like you have to reinvent the box to ship these stupid things.
Correct.
It's like, I don't even understand why. Frangelico's the shape of like Aunt Jemima or something. I'm not entirely
exactly.
sure
It's the
what
Italian
this
Aunt
is.
Jemima bottle.
Yeah,
So
I don't
great.
understand. But it's, by the way, adios Aunt Jemima. But you get my point. It's like this person's shape bottle, and then the De Serono bottle, which is an almond. Correct me if I'm wrong here. An almond alcohol that is.
Huh?
Is it Cherry Pits?
Is De Serono
Almondy?
Cherry Pit?
I don't know.
No, it's all. Well, regardless,
Google that.
it is.
Let's
yeah.
Google that.
Well, it's an
Cherry Pit.
amaretto. It's an amaretto.
Yes.
So amaretto
Yeah.
is
Correct.
you
Almond
guys-
flavored.
You guys are master Psalms. I'm
know.
I'm just an
It's been a while.
idiot from Cleveland.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
But the question is, like, when it comes to these, like, De Serono, Frangelico, all of these things, both of you have worked as beverage directors, as, I don't know, bartenders, as, just on the floor. What's the purpose of these alcohols? Why do they exist? Do you recommend? I mean, are you literally like, do you bring the dessert tray around, Carlton, when you're working at the Little Nell, and you say, would you like a Frangelico?
No, but
I mean,
let's think through this though, in terms of, if you look at where people, I'm just riffing, like if you're asking me and I'm trying to come up with an answer, look at where the American palate was in the 70s and the 80s, what people were drinking, and a lot of soft drinks, sweeter things, and even on the wine front, like what type of wines were being served, and they tend to be sweeter. So that's when, the liquor people said, how can we get in the game here? And that's great for both cocktails and after dinner. And now, as you look at the resurgence of, the development of the palate, things like Amaros or Campari, it's like the shift of where the palate is now compared to where it was then. maybe those are just the gateway. I mean, when were we drinking those in high school and college?
Yeah.
So it could be having something to do with that.
I also feel like there's like this. It was a culture at that time where people were. It was like sort of socially acceptable alcoholics, and they were trying to find ways to fit more alcohol in, but seem culturally relevant.
That's different than now, huh?
Madeira, and it was like start with the martini, and then you go into leap for milk and have a leap for milk, and then drinking a Chianti, and then maybe you had a port, and then you went by the fire and had a Di Serrano or Fragelica. You know what I mean? It's like you seem so exotic. Look at this, just like we're to tour the world in beverages, but ultimately it was like, I'm trying to black out next to this fire by midnight. And it just made me seem like I was a worldly person in the 70s.
I'm not going to lie to you. Blacking out by a fire before midnight is pretty much my goal now. So I don't know if it's like,
pretty much it was how Saab and I were successful in Aspen, just getting rich people to black out next to the fire every night.
I mean, and now you guys are those rich people. It's amazing to see that happen. It's great.
Carlton invented the Chambord luge.
Please tell me this is true wherever you're going. Chambord is the perfect next one to talk about.
There's a Wikipedia page for Chambord luge, and Carlton's on there.
Sam and I would just had brainstorms such as how much more creative can we be with just getting people to black out and spend more and more money.
Hold on. We got to take 5 steps back. Tell me, you're telling me you poured Chambord, which is down an ice lute. Oh, okay. So I got really excited by this.
By the time you're done,
I got really excited by this. Chambord was one of these weird. The place I bartended at all through, after college and all this stuff, it was kind of, they quoted themselves as kind of a martini bar, which of course means we never actually served a martini ever. We served
just in a martini glass.
Yeah, we served like espresso and chocolate and, all
You're
this.
so ahead of your time, all those espresso martinis, Jason.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think I ever drank any. I was busy, housing the Di Serrano after hours. But I would, Chambord actually was used nonstop. And I think it was half for its color and then half for its, just the fact that it is like a fruit bomb nonsense cough syrup. I'm not a fan, and I don't mean to crap on anybody who loves their Chambord.
You serve that at Thanksgiving because you love turkey too, right? You do turkey and do Chambord. That's like your all-American. Yeah.
Listeners to this podcast know that my what's the opposite of your death row meal? Like when you're prospering and you have to eat something shitty. It would be like Beaujolais Nouveau, which I can't stand and I wish would be erased from the face of the earth. And I get notes all the time because of my hatred of it. And then Chambord and turkey. Turkey's fine. It's just like, why? There's so many better things than turkey.
But as we're talking through this though, like I would love, this is, I'm pitching you an idea for whether it's another documentary or maybe it's a show on Som TV, but, Behind the Bottle. And this is, I want to know the origin story. I want to be at the boardroom table when they pitched the Frangelico bottle, the Chambord bottle. And somebody said, yeah, that's a great idea. Yet it has withstood the test of time. The Galliano bottle, like the marketing of this is brilliant. And nobody's questioned said, hey, we need to rebrand this. We're not selling enough. Like that's usually what people say is like, okay, we need a new shape, new sizes, and let's get out there to get a new demographic. But nobody has gone back to some of these. It seems to have worked.
Well, I think first of all, the real issue is that everybody's focusing on themselves, Instagram influencers and all this stuff, and we're not focusing on getting people to black out, especially rich people, in front of a fire at midnight. And that's what we really need to change things. I think a lot of the history of these cocktails is incredibly fascinating. You're right. A lot of them were created by marketing. I mean, in fact, probably 2/3 may have been, but some are organic. Some of them are your catch-alls like Hemingway invented it, which is bullshit. But but then there's the ones that are still out there and they hang and they have these stories. And this is why, going back to my earlier Galliano story about the Harvey Wallbanger of why this is so fun is it doesn't really matter where they came from. You can make up the story of where, for instance, here's a good example. Do you guys know I'm gonna tell you the history of a particular cocktail that I think we can all agree is of this era. Did you guys in 1989? You guys were I was 9 years old. Sabato, you were probably around my similar age. Young, something like that.
Actually, or my fake ID?
Well, whatever. but the Super Bowl happened with Joe Montana then, and it was a really, really incredible situation. I had that drive where Joe Montana drove down, and there's like this really epic story where Joe Montana was in the huddle, and they had like a few seconds left, and he had to go the whole, like 60 seconds left, had to go the whole field, had to win the Super Bowl. And there's all these legends about what he said to his team with no timeouts in the huddle before they drove down and scored that game-winning touchdown. And people say that John Candy was in the audience and he just said, there's John Candy. But really what it is he came up with the recipe for the melon ball in that huddle. That's when it happened. He said, he sat there and he said, if we win this, gentlemen, I am going to take Midori and I am going to create the greatest cocktail you ever had. And then the entire San Francisco 49ers, they had melon balls for the next 2 days after they won the Super Bowl. So
what's so funny? I can verify that because I was at the Four Seasons in Maui and I ordered one. I said, who came up with the melon ball? And all of a sudden the guy starts telling me the story about Joe Montana. And so
I hope Baxter Holmes from ESPN is listening to this. He's like, just spit out his chicken. He's like, what the fuck? Anyways, these things, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, here's my goal to the listeners here with this ridiculous podcast we're having. I want you to pick a cocktail from the 70s, make it yours, and make up a full of shit story about it and try to evangelize it. That's, for me, you can't take the Harvey Wallbanger. That's mine. That's my cocktail. Sabato, what is yours? You got to defend a cocktail right now and make up a story. I want you right now to pick a cocktail and make up a bullshit story of how it was invented.
I can't lie to listeners like that. I mean, I don't take them for granted like you do, Jason. So, but here's one that was like I didn't know the story. I thought it was like some bartender made it up. So I'm going to go back to, remember I was on that airplane drinking Drambuie on the way to Jakarta. So we would go to,
who could forget?
So for spring break, we were in high school and everyone would go to Bali and you'd go to these bars. It was like a half-hour plane ride. And I'm like, oh, all these drinks and what should I order? And they had this drink on the menu. It was called a long, slow, comfortable screw up against the wall. And I'm like, oh, I'm a high school kid. I'm like, I'm going to order that. That sounds awesome, right up my alley. And I never thought anything of it. And I drank it the whole weekend. And I thought I was the coolest kid on the island. I was talking with Jeff Bell about retro cocktails the other day. And I mentioned that. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he kind of broke it down to me. And I realized long, being a long drink, slow, any drink that has slow in it, slow gin, comfortable, Southern Comfort. Against the wall was the Galliano for Wallbanger. And Screw had orange juice in it. So I was like, oh my God, that was like the code for breaking it down. And all this time I thought it was just somebody had made it up as like a bartender trying to sell a drink. But it was like, it made sense. So that's the truth, not fiction, Jason. So I don't know if that, yeah.
If you think I'm not telling the truth with my Joe Montana story, then, well, shame on you, I guess. I think that's almost like I don't know if anyone's taken like organic chem or anything, when you have to break down, the actual like elements that are in combinations, NaCl and all that stuff. Like that's exactly what you just did for the cocktail. Like you broke down, okay, so it has 2 parts nitrogen, 1 part hydrogen, 3 parts, it's interesting.
That's the most highbrow analogy anybody's ever used to describe anything with SoCo or Galliano in it.
Southern Comfort, I could do 2 hours on Southern Comfort. I'm pretty sure I never would have most of my adolescence was surrounded by Southern Comfort, in the way that like you do shots and it's in your parents' liquor cabinet and they never drink it. And I don't even know what the hell it's made of. But I could make something up if you want. Carlton, what's this cocktail for you? Give me either a bullshit or a real story of something.
Well, I'd say it was one of my favorites, which is the Long Island iced tea. And for years, that's how I celebrated my birthday. I would drink Long Island iced teas until I forgot my name. and that was a tradition.
Wait, hold on. How did this happen? Like, what's the reason? Long Island iced teas are. What's the reason you start there? Why is that your celebration?
You start and then there.
Correct.
Exactly
It's the start and finish of the
right,
night. Well, it's just a guarantee. It's like, you're going around drinking Bud Lights all night, which is also one of my preferred beverages. And, you're either going to like,
dear listener, this guy runs a group of wineries that are like some of the most prestigious in the world. Bud Light
ice cold. I like
and the Long Island iced tea are his.
Because I understand beer. Most people don't understand beer. I understand its purpose. So that's why I drink Bud Light.
That's fair.
I spent years celebrating my birthday with the Long Island iced tea before I really learned the significance of the Long Island iced tea and the role it played in American history. Which was, when I learned, I was flabbergasted. And apparently, what happened was when in the middle of the Vietnamese War, Gerald Ford brought a bunch of heads of state together at the Bohemian Grove to sort of negotiate how they would exit this thing. They've been trying to get out for decades. And he says, look, we shouldn't have been in the first place. We got to get out. How are we going to do this? And they couldn't find a compromise. And the lady that was there, she was sort of looking over this thing and she said, look, I understand. If we don't figure this out, the country's going to be doomed. And, before dinner, no one could figure out sort of what cocktail they have. One guy wanted gin, one guy wanted vodka, another guy wanted bourbon. And they couldn't agree on anything, not even the cocktail. So the next day at lunch, they said, look, we're having lunch, we'll have iced tea. And she says, okay. So she took a little bit of everything, a little vodka, a little gin, a little bourbon, everything, put it all in a pitcher. And she got them drunk enough where they finally came to a compromise and a plan to exit Vietnam. And once they found out what had happened, they said, this is incredible. This cocktail represents what makes our nation great. And they named it a Long Island iced tea because the lady was from Long Island. She had a really strong Long Island accent. And it's stuck. And it's now still the cocktail that you get greeted with when you go to the White House balls to this day.
First of all, Carl, I'm gonna beg you to tell me that's true. That's the greatest thing ever. That's
I literally just go. I was like, "What's some shit that happened in '70?" It's like, "Oh, Vietnamese War. Let's go with this."
This is like that. You just made my day.
See, you're challenging sommeliers. We are kings of bullshit. There's no one better at bullshit than sommeliers. I can make a story up on the fly. You just tell me. I
love it. This is so good, man. I'm so proud of you, Carlton. Your show on CNN is truly amazing. Anybody who wants to, you can see Sabato at his go-go show in New York. What's the place? You do that dance?
Flaming
depends what night.
Okay, good. No, it's really great to have you guys on. Honestly, it's a real treat to have you both on at the same time. It was unexpected and wonderful, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want everybody to go pick a cocktail and make up a bullshit story and defend it to your friends and relatives, and then pass out at 11:59 in front of the fire, and hopefully you're rich when you do it. Thanks for being on.
Another thing, Jason, one other thing I know you're a big fan of Drambuis we're talking about, but if you save up enough of the caps of Drambuie, I think it's like you can get different things if you send them in. If you save up, I think like 500, they actually send you a fur Braveheart vest with it. So just wanted to put that out there for you and your listeners to start. Don't throw those away. That's like some real coin.
It's like camel cash. I like this. Okay, so they send you a Braveheart fur. Okay. All right, listeners, Here we go. The good thing is if I took my shirt off, I already have a vest built on like that. So I don't need that.
I can't wait to see who you get to sponsor this episode. And I mean, I think they're going to come out of the woodwork for this one.
Yeah, no kidding. There's absolutely no question. This one's real commercial. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on. I am going to go and reassess my life. It's good to have you guys.
Thanks, Jason.
Hopefully we succeeded in making you decide for Cinco de Mayo you'd rather have a Harvey Wallbanger instead of a margarita. I wonder how many of you actually have even heard of a Harvey Wallbanger or tasted one in the first place. But don't forget, Joe Montana invented it. No, that was the melon ball. Whatever. Who cares? Everybody, SomTV.com, $49.99 for an entire year. We really, really appreciate you all for listening. And don't forget Chicago, the premiere of our new film, The Whole Animal, May 26th. An incredible event is happening, and I'm really proud of this movie, and you will like it very much. Be safe, everyone.